Hello and welcome to today's episode of Life is a Piano with the wonderful Grand Rapids gospel pianist extraordinaire, Kenny Matthews. A lot of you might know Kenny Matthews from his work in the church scene around Grand Rapids. He is a music director and wonderful arranger of many different songs and concerts and styles. And it was great talking with him today about his craft and experiences as a pianist. If you enjoy these types of conversations and want to support podcasts like these that I produce, you can head on over to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. There, you'll get early access to audio and video forms of every podcast, as well as a mailer newsletter, exclusive merch, discounts on merch through groups that I'm involved in, as well as the ability to hire my services as an instructor, consultant, or recording artist. So thanks again for tuning in, and thanks for checking out the craft of these wonderful pianists that I have in this series. Feel free to give a follow or subscribe, depending on the platform that you are choosing to listen or watch this on, and share this with some friends. Maybe you all can talk about something you learned from this episode. Anyway, let's get right into today's episode with Kenny Matthews. You know, this isn't a press junket or something. It's just like a conversation.
No, I'm gang. So, what's up? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Yeah, how's it been? I've seen clips here and there, and didn't you put out music recently or something, or you're gonna put out music? Or
Yeah, so okay, first thing first, the Kenny Matthews band is going well. We haven't done too many gigs in the pandemic. We have really started, I started getting asked to do different events in 2016, like, you know, with a band or whatever. And of course, as a facilitator, it was easy to just get the guys that I knew who can do it, just explain what the vibe was or what I thought the vibe should be. And we all had already worked together and for everybody doing something different. So it was the same group of people. It just always was just a different front person out of the group of people.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So it was easy to just, you know, collaborate as a team once people kept calling. And then, so like, I had a different vibe that I wanted to go for as far as song selections, which made my collaboration with them a little more different, because once we started doing like certain shows and it was like almost top 40-ish, we started getting more calls like, hey, who is that band? Who is that band? And then, so of course, we didn't have a name at first. It was just like, oh, that's Kenny and Friends. And that sounds so weird. Like,
right. Yeah.
So I just was like, you know, yeah, we the Kenny Matthews band. And I took it, you know, Dave Matthews. That's where I kind of got the whole, this is the plus to having Matthews as a last name.
Yeah.
And so I took it and just put it together, the Kenny Matthews band. And we just been rocking out like crazy. And for the last 4 or 5 years, it had just been like gradually growing. And then the pandemic hit, and we only did, last year I did two gigs, maybe two live gigs last year, and then 2 pre-recordings. So
okay,
4 gigs in a year. That's, you know, that's horrible for a band, but you know, that's been cool.
Yeah, is that like a lot of the? Is there some crossover between, like, you know, like the gospel artists you work with that like the church you play at, or is it different?
Yeah, so it is though. It is. So
okay.
what ends up happening is a couple of the singers, matter of fact, all of the singers actually sing in church. And so you know, what I like about like gospel singers is a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are versatile. And so once you put them in R&B field specifically, they do really well in the R&B because it's kind of gospel and R&B kind of go hand in hand. And so it was easy just to pull some of them, and all of them sing at church. So we be done with gigs on Saturday and go sing at church on Sunday.
But I feel like that's I think of other groups that one that comes to mind, this kind of fusion band called the Funky Knuckles. Their chemistry is built from like the rhythm section. They all play in a church band together. They have like a week, or I don't know nowadays with pandemic, but they have a weekly residency at a club, and then they gig on the like Fridays and Saturdays. Mm-hmm. And it's like that chemistry of being, thrown into different situations makes the group sound really tight. So I'm sure for you, it's just like, okay, we're just, the people I already know could do stuff, just throw different tunes.
Yeah. And whenever there's a little alcohol, everything makes it, the collaboration just becomes a lot easier. No, but I think what happens, like I said, for me, for most of the people I know, most of the musicians who play in the secular world anyway came from church. Most of them, 90% of them. So it's just easy to, especially when I play with some of the talented guys here in town, and like they're really talented. Sean and Shaq, like I call them for everything. Like I try not to do nothing. I try not to do nothing without both of them. But if I can't, you're always gonna see one of them. And then what happens is like just our chemistry is already there from everything else. I think chemistry too with everybody, because we're friends outside of the music. So the chemistry becomes a lot stronger on stage when we trying to, produce a sound or produce or give this show. Our chemistry, we kind of read and fill in the gaps of each other. And so it makes it a lot easier when you already working with them all the time, and you already hanging out with them all the time. And, it's so funny because when we get in a working environment, everybody can be like, hey, this ain't sweet, or you ain't acting like, and there's no egos, you know what I'm saying? There's no egos. It's not hard to work with them. So that makes it chemistry makes it everything. And it's easy to just flip the switch. And we got to go to church. We know that the chemistry there in church. And if we got to do secular, we know chemistry is there in secular, and they really good. So that makes everything easy.
Yeah. And I've always been, like right away with my first kind of like opportunities to play with gospel artists, like working with Maurice Townsend, putting together like, he would kind of do a hybrid like youth and his crew type of ensemble for like, worship conferences or like youth conferences, and just to see like, just from a foundation, it's like, oh, these people, like all these drummers and keyboard play, like they just, from a bass line, they could just play really well. So it's not so much being like, having to walk them through like, okay, here's kind of how a song goes and here's kind of like vocabulary. It's like, hey, here's the tune, do your thing, watch for cues, maybe. Like, yeah, there's a lot of freedom and people can just play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Another thing is too, when you play with the skill set, you just said something crazy. When you play with people who have a great skill set, it's easy to just shoot the tone and just run. And it makes your job your job more pleasant.
Yep.
I've been on gigs where I did not know the music, and just because I can understand the concept of what's being played, I'm like, oh, okay. You hear it around a couple times, like, hurry up and tell me, we number system guys, so that happens real quick, and then it turns out to be dope, man.
Yeah. It's I feel like the first time I played with like like one of my first gigging bands when I was like starting out in college was with Hannah Rose and the Gravestones. And, you know, she, at the time, the lineup was me, Justin Wieringa and Justin Avdek, who I still play with in Earth Radio and other projects. And then Mario Copeland, and just kind of seeing like, you know, we'd play these sets at Billy's that, you know, you're playing for like 9 to 1 and you got to fill a bunch of time and people want to keep dancing. So it was cool having, you know, Justin and Mario, who had a rapport from Muskegon and could like stretch any tune and take it crazy places, like being able to kind of get that like that knowledge that, you know, would probably take like a whole class to like in college to dissect, like, okay, here's kind of what they're doing and communication and vocabulary, but to just kind of be thrown at it was really cool to like help me grow as someone who could get on a stage and not like be as concerned with performing, because I was so used to like, you know, the classical realm or competitions, like everything's so like intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're one of the dopest players I've ever. The first time I met you, I don't even remember where we were. I know it was we were somewhere with Benjaman James.
Oh yeah.
You started playing. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he got crazy.
Well,
I was actually nervous. I swear, I'm telling the truth, I was nervous.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna get it. Well, and I was thinking about that too. Like, you know, I had remembered finding an old clip of us at Unruly Brewing in Muskegon.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I was like, I don't think that was the first time, but just seeing the band, because I think it, you know, that was before Shaq and Shone started playing with Ben. It was BK and Joe Vasquez, but you know, still Evan Taylor and Caleb. That was a fun night just to have, like, because it's so rare that there's like not only another keyboard player around, but someone who can just kind of jump in.
Yeah, no,
like,
that was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I think when we did Founders, I still got the video when we was doing Diamond in the Back, and you doing like this crazy solo over Diamond in the Back. It was crazy. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was.
So, I said that to say that we gotta work together again for sure.
Yes.
I'm open.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to focus on this year, because last year, you know, aside from like, you know, the unemployment stuff helping, most of the work I got was because of the community. It wasn't, you know, me reaching out trying to apply for a job at Staples or something. It was, you know, someone being like, hey, can you write an album review about my new release, or can you record Wurlitzer for my country album? Like, it's just people like activating my skill sets. So I'm definitely like knowing that this year's also still going to be tricky for gigs, or the like the usual, like, oh, we'll book 6 months out. It might be like kind of like this GR Noir thing. Like, I got asked to do dates like not even a week ago.
Yeah.
Like, do you have these 2 days open these times? Like, okay, I guess that's how gigging's going to be this year, is a lot of like, oh, we can open now. Can you play these 4 days?
Yeah, and it is strange. I have not got any. Well, okay, so as far as just like gigs outside of my consistent, like, you know, church situation, I have not got any calls this year yet, and I'm not nervous, only because I know what we're up against as musicians right now, like, you know, and because there's no normalcy right now as far as what's gonna happen next. You know, honestly, I'm kind of okay with not having to be around crowds right now because, you know, just the pandemic and what's happening in the pandemic. But, you know, just to even be getting calls, that's dope, because I'm telling you, like, of course, as a musician, you know, we thrive off of getting calls or whatever, but not
Right.
having no calls right now. It's a 50-50, like, man, but then it's like also like, dang, I also don't want to be put in a situation to where, you know, just there's another shutdown and there's another, you know, and it's so tricky, especially in Michigan right now. It's real tricky.
Yeah. Well, and I think of even like I had some gigs through Blue Water Kings, not, you know, still a fraction of like the weddings I would normally do. And it was interesting to see like, you know, everyone's perception of what's going on right now is different, you know, across all different types of, you know, different, like, I think of the people who I saw doing weddings. I was literally like, I did 3 weddings where like, it was this within the same like set of family friends. It was all people who could like, you know, throw a bunch of money to have like a wedding set up in their backyard at like a nice house near a lake.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so it's like, it's like, okay, these, you know, the people who have resources, they're like, yeah, we could throw a party and figure it out. And it's, you know, trying to navigate like, okay, I know they're like, you know, it's outdoors, like they're being safe, but they're also, you know, there was one wedding I did where people were literally just getting like, they were getting drunk enough where they thought it was karaoke. So they were jumping on stage during the breaks and like, you know, playing equipment and singing into mics. We're like, stop.
You know, that's weird. Super weird.
But yeah, it's nice to get, definitely nice to get the calls. I'm also, you know, thinking about what I'm working on. I've really in my head been thinking about like, what things can I put energy and time into that are going to help me in the long run and aren't just, you know, it's not me just waiting for things to return to normal.
Yeah. And I think that's difficult as a musician because a lot of our creativity, especially if you don't like have multiple ways of being creative, like, you know, being a piano player does not always make you like the main guy in the room. You know, like I tell everybody
Right.
that all the time, like, you know, when it comes down to like engineering or if it comes down to like just knowing another instrument or, you know, being a piano player, sometimes, especially if you don't have that way or finesse to be able to play multiple instruments on a gig, that's important. You have to find other ways to be creative, man. And I mean, like to create streams of revenue and to create just a lane that's going to work for now until there is some normal activity of being a musician again, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think of, you know, like you being an MD. I assume at your church that because I saw that live stream of you cueing people. So
oh yeah. I'm
and well, and that's like I think people underestimate, you know, I'm sure you know, there is a respect like for talented musicians in the church, but sometimes I feel like there's that kind of like, man, you're so killing, but then it's like if you were to break down like what your head has to go through to like, okay, I got to pay attention to like these pre-prepared tracks, but also the band, but also the pastor, but also the singer, but also like, and you're cueing and listening and looking and yeah, it's not just like hit play on the tracks and just kind of wait for the tracks to stop.
Well, so it's funny that you said that because what I've learned is this, man. Being in my position, I always had to help guide what I wanted to produce, you know. So like even in church, it was always easy for me to tell a million people what to do at one time because I always wanted to be responsible for the sound that was created or that came from what I was trying to create in the moment. And so it becomes second nature, you know, now. playing with pre-prepared tracks though is definitely that can be tricky because anything can happen. And what I'm telling like some of the guys that I work with who is still up and coming and just still, you know, perfecting their crafts is like, you got to be prepared for if this track don't ever work, that's not going to stop the show. You know,
yep.
If the pastor want to keep going with the song, you have to be prepared to keep going. And you have to be able to, like, the difference between like working at church and then working in like the Kenny Matthews band is there's a different level of structure that happens in the Kenny Matthews band where it's like, hey, look, you know, this song right here, this is A section, B section, you know, in the bridge vamp, we can kind of loop and play around at the end. Yeah. But at church, you got to kind of be sensitive to what's happening in the moment because sometimes they might, you know, it's real easy for a worship leader to be like, let's go back to the top of the song. And we're like, we didn't. And so if that happens in the moment, thank God that I have a team of people who follows what it is that I put out there. So, because I mean, I still think that there's a level of if you preparing tracks and you working hard to make sure that this is going to present a better sound in the worship experience, I think it's okay to follow that. But, you know, we have tools like Ableton that help us navigate if we have to be on the fly. But I tell guys all the time, man, you just got to be prepared to do whatever. And I'm to the point to where now, especially because I'm not in church, well, we're not in the physical location. We pre-record or we, you know, stream or whatever. I tell guys now more than ever, you have to be like on your stuff because it is one thing in a live experience where it sounds good and the mistakes happen so quick in live and you can't replay them and you can't repeat it and they miss it. But that mistake that happened on the stream hits a little differently.
Yeah.
and so I'm always consistently letting the guys know what's going to happen next. And it's a great thing that the talkback is off everywhere else because I'm yelling. Like, you know, obviously you can hear it if you're watching my stream because I got it hooked up to my rig or whatever. But I'm telling the guys all the time, hey, man, listen, this is what's going to happen next. And be there. Be ready. Let's get to the point, you know, because you don't get a second time on stream. On stream, especially if there's thousands of people watching and they end the stream and it can be replayed and replayed. Then you become a meme and then you sitting there like Professor Joe, you know? So
yeah.
So yeah, when I'm in church, I definitely take a different approach to just MDing period because church, especially in the urban church, everything happens in moments, you know, so stuff moving so quick with you can miss the moment if you're not focused or paying attention. And, you know, you learn that just being in church all your life, you just learn his moments.
Right. Well, and you know, I grew up going to Madison Square Church, and I was a kid when Ken Reynolds was still there. So I didn't, you know, there's some memories of him in worship, but I just remember when I first started, like the first worship band I was in, I think it might have been 5th grade. Like a friend of a friend's dad wanted to do like the like put together a youth focused worship team for like the children's Sunday school worship time before they go off to Sunday school. And you know, so I was learning songs, getting used to like the lead sheet format, like having been a, you know, classically trained, it's like, okay, I'm used to sheet music. So to have nothing there but like a letter and the words, it's like, oh, it's starting to understand what I can do with, you know, very little given and what I've learned. But another thing Madison Square did that, or at least tried to do, I don't know what they do now, that especially with Laura Carpenter not there anymore. But
Okay.
like, Laura Carpenter would have her worship team, and it would kind of be the more gospel focused, group. There's more prophetic worship things happening. And then, okay, there's this husband and wife duo, and they're kind of a little bit more folksy, like a different vibe. And then, oh, it's this guy like from another church coming with his band, and that's when they pull out the organ. And so there was like, and having a Hispanic community around the church too, trying to not sound too hokey, doing the like, we're gonna say it in English and then we're gonna repeat the verse, say it in Spanish, like
Yeah.
trying to be accommodating, but also have some sort of consistent through line of like, if because it eventually it turned into, they had to readjust of like, it's like, okay, a lot of people show up when Laura's doing her thing, but not as many people are showing up with this dude. Is it a difference of opinion? Is it like a difference of standard? Like, so yeah, it's interesting to see like how different churches do it. And maybe now they're doing like the more modern church vibe of, tracks and monitored things and stuff.
I got an idea though, and I say this, and a lot of church people, and it's almost a cardinal sin to say this, and I'm gonna say it anyway. Church revolves, first of all, not just church. The world revolves around music. Okay, So like you have commercials that is trying to sell you a toothbrush, and there's music playing in the background. Like they have absolutely nothing to do with the one or the other, and they understand that music is a language, right? That does not need permission to enter your psyche. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy because like this funny and weird, but it's a song that I would never listen to. That's like number one on the hip hop charts right now. And I know the words to it, and I never ever stopped to even listen to it. It's this song, Meg Thee Stallion, like Body Yaddy or something like that.
Oh yeah.
I never ever took the time to listen to it. Never took the time to stop and pay attention. But it just goes to show that you never pay attention to how much music you intake without actually permitting the intake of that music. And so in church, what happens is this. Church, especially when you're more charismatic, people buy into that charismatic stuff, you know what I'm saying? And, they love charismatic music and charismatic musicians. And that's why if you just look over the course of time of the evolution of music, a lot of people who were out front was always like charismatic, even if they had a different style or a different whatever. If they come out dancing and moving and whatever, and don't let them be able to just sing a little bit. It changes how people receive it. And so people are moved by not just music alone. And it's crazy because I said this, most of the greatest churches in the world have dope singers or musicians or something dope about the music department.
Yep.
And people don't agree with that. They be like, no, it's the pastor. Like, nah. The pastor is like Phil Jackson, and the band is like the Bulls. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, of course they go hand in hand, but you need a great team to win a championship. And I've never seen Phil Jackson win a championship without a great team.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's the best way to explain it without offending people.
Right. Well, and even like, when I was in school, a lot of the way that a lot of professors in academia teach the history of music being written and kind of like the development of like the theoretical side of it, it's all like, there's like cuneiform tablets in like ancient kingdoms where it's all just, symbols on clay. And then there comes a point where like the only things that kept surviving, like people being conquered, things being burned to the ground, like it was, all these Eurocentric like religious centers that were the only places that kept libraries, had an education system, A lot of communities were, you know, the schedules were built around like, okay, you know, Saturday or Sunday, that's the church day, and it's all day. Like there's different orders of service. There's, you know, all these different songs that will be learned, and like the people who kept playing around with that format would, like, you know, they would sneak in like, oh yeah, this is a song that people would know from like drinking the night before at the bar, but we're gonna like stretch out the melody so big so that nobody really hears it in the, you know, the higher ups.
Yeah,
And
no, I get it.
yeah, so it's interesting, like as much as people think like, you know, there is, and obviously that's one segment of the planet, like in terms of looking at the history, but it's cool to see, like, you know, there's always been kind of this push and pull from the sacred and secular communities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, like I said, and it's so crazy that it's funny that you even mentioned that, because I listen to a lot of songs that has crossed genres, or a lot of melodies that, let's say that, without, you know, without words, that has crossed genres, and it's some of the greatest songs on both sides of either side of the genre. It's like, oh dang, that melody goes far, you know what I'm saying? And so it's music is important to, especially, and maybe because I'm a musician. Music is important to our day to day. I was working at a job, and a 9 to 5, and the only thing that kept me sane was music. And so I would literally be working, like doing the numbers in my head to the song. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the only thing that kept me sane doing that, because as a musician, especially when you're a creative musician, you don't want to. It's hard. Now you got to do what you got to do to, by any means necessary, to make the ends meet. Yep. But it's hard when you're creative and you wanna be creative all the time, and you want to be creative all the time in that field and get to it. But hey, at the same time, you want to be in a position to where you feeding your family too. So, but the music helped me. The music helped me get through it. The music helped me get through a lot of it.
Yeah, I think of even like every now and again, I'll see a video of like, you know, like I feel like it was like a West African like post office or something. And the whole department was like, there was a system of like, you know, something coming in, something being notarized with a stamp, something being repackaged and then placed in an area to mail. And they had it all set up to like a rhythm, so that like where the work was more, it wasn't like, you know, someone at the top being like, all right, if you guys just sing a song, the work will go by faster and it won't feel like work. It was the employees who already are going to, like, you know, go sing and dance in their own communities in their free time. They're just doing what comes naturally to like help go through the workday. It's like people forget how, you know, even that 10-minute drive to work with the radio on, like that can like get people pumped for a day, or like decompress from leaving work, or it's, yeah. I never understand people who, I haven't met many of them, but like a couple people who don't really listen to music unless it's like a very specific time of the year. Like, oh, it's Christmas, I'll throw on a Christmas Pandora or something. But yeah.
No, that's real. Now for me, okay, I don't really listen to a lot of music, but what happens is I'm always reciting music in my head. It's the weirdest thing ever. Hopefully you understood when I said that made sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So like if I'm in a car, normally if I'm in a car, I'm probably talking on the phone, or sometimes I drive in silence. And even driving in silence, it's still a consistent record playing, whether that's just I'm thinking out loud, or and there's like a soundtrack consistently, like even, like working in working somewhere, you hear every, like right now, if I'm quiet enough, I hear the room, what's happening in the room. And it's crazy because if you ask the common ear, like, you don't hear that? And they're like, no, you don't hit, like, you ever walk past the refrigerator and was like, you don't hear that?
Yeah.
They're like, and it's crazy because people don't pick up on just like sounds and vibrations, and so especially like when you there, it's crazy when you want to do certain things, you turn on certain music and it gets you in different moods. You know, you want to be pumped, you put on, like, people got workout tracks and they listen to that stuff to work out, to get through the workout. You know, people have, when they sad, they hear certain songs. When they break up with somebody, it's songs that make them scream, and you know, and it's crazy because our life revolves around music, and whether we like it or not, that's just there's no other way around it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been, like, even at a car dealership. You go in a car dealership, they trying to sell cars, they playing music in the background. You go to a restaurant where you want to eat and talk and, you know, try to decompress, and it's still a soft tone of music somewhere happening, and you ever heard it so faint when you, like, some restaurants you go to, the music is really, really low, and you be like, turn it up. Turn it up.
What's this song? Yeah.
Yes. Go shopping. Go to the mall. Go to every store in the mall. There's a song playing under you walking through the mall. And every different store, there's a different song playing at the same time, and it never collides. It never collides with each other. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's so, like, well, and I thought about, like, you know, going out to eat. Justin Avdek will bring this up because I think him and Mario, I think, had the original joke about this. But when you're in a restaurant and, like, like the food finally gets to the table and you start eating, like, whatever's on the radio, that's now your favorite song.
Yes.
Like, you just start vibing with it, even if you've never heard the tune. Or
never. But that's real. You know what's crazy? I never thought about that, but that's so true.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it is about food that makes us so happy, in the song or the soundtrack. It could be, you know, like, I want to kill my dad. And you like, yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, these fries are good.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, it's, well, and I'm always, like, especially with how many different ways between, like, playing in groups that, you know, just around town, around the scene, doing things where I've been playing with musicians from around the world, like, just being plopped into these different scenarios of, like, all right, let's, you know, figure out, like, how to learn something that's tricky, figure out how to create something out of a very specific prompt. I remember it, you know, like, even little things like I was in the composition studio for a semester at Grand Valley, and one thing they do is every spring semester, I guess every winter semester, they look at what art exhibits in the library, and your only prompt is to create, like, I think it's like two or three, like, minute long compositions. So, like, just long enough to, like, get an idea from a painting or a photo or whatever's in the exhibit, and then, like, turn that into something that reflects, you know, a concept from what you've observed. And some people would, you know, pick the tiniest little detail and that's the focal point. Some people would just take in the broad scope of it and, like, you know, try and include as much detail as they can in a minute. And so it was interesting to see, like, if you're given the same set of things, like, people are gonna interact with it differently. So even a listener, like, is gonna, you know, maybe they're shopping and they hear a song and they're kind of just like, okay, and they're just kind of passively listening and buy it. But then as soon as they're in their car and that same song comes on, they, like, they know the words, they're dancing, like. So it's fun seeing how people interact with music.
No, yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I feel as keyboard players too, we're kind of put in situations where we're kind of the glue for a lot of different things happening. Like, yes, you can have, a band without a keyboard player and have a guitar, but when you do have a keyboard player, now that it offers, the guitarist doesn't have to only be chordal, he can do lead lines, and then you can trade those roles. And there's now another texture of like, digital sounds or acoustic sounds or pads or
Yeah. We're the stability of the band. The drummer is the pace.
Mm-hmm.
The bass player is the body. The lead guitar is the personality. And the piano is the stability. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy because like, and then anything else is just like a major, like a dope accessory. Like when you have horns and everything, and it's no diss to any other instrumentalist who plays anything outside of those four instruments. But It's crazy how those four instruments are more common than it is to have a 12-piece band with. Now, do the rest of them people do the rest of those instruments make the day? Absolutely. But there's a certain stability that comes with especially if you're a good player, there's a stability that comes with the consistency of the music. And I don't know no other way to break it down. That's the only way I think I could break it down. The drummer is the pace, the bass is the body, the guitar player is the personality or the characteristics, and the piano is the stability. Like and so being able to be a piano player, it makes me have more of a favoritism to my instrument. Now, in real life, I would love to play bass, because it looked cool. But I can out key bass a bass player any day, But I like being able to, because it's endless. There's endless just things you can do with the piano where, just endless phrases, endless vocabulary. And with other instruments, except guitar, because guitar has but guitar is even limited too.
Right.
To a certain extent, guitar players for sure can play around in heavy chords and but it's certain things that a piano player can do and have the flexibility that other instrumentalists don't have, or other instruments period don't have. Like, you don't really hear a bass player playing 10 finger chords.
Yeah.
It's not even possible.
No, it's like, even if you extend the neck, it's like that just increases like the difficulty of like trying to use your thumbs.
Right. And you don't really hear guitarists doing more, anything more than 6. It's kind of like gets weird,
Yeah.
And so, and then, with a drummer, it's only so many chops you can do as a drummer. But as a keyboard player, the expansion of sitting in front of a piano and just looking at it like, okay, I can play this inversion, or I can add this major, minor, or the 7th, or a dominant, or 11th, or just spreading out what you're playing and what you're doing and how you're looking at it and how you're approaching it. It changes the name of the game. If I'm playing a double A flat, but then I want to add like that D in there and make it like kind of diminishing, but not really. You don't hear that you don't hear that stuff from guitarists. And then I've heard guitarists sit there and literally like, man, my finger can't. I can't. It's too much.
Can't
it's
reach
too close.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and I wouldn't. Now I would play other instruments, but I wouldn't choose one over my main instrument being piano.
Yeah, I definitely, because I think about when my freshman year at Grand Valley, and I was like, like it was the first time being around on a very consistent basis, like people who all had very similar goals of like, all right, we're not, this isn't us in our garage anymore. It's us trying to take a step towards doing this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
It comes with a certain degree of like, being proficient at an instrument, or like understanding what that means, or like being open to like adjusting, and then getting into the music building, and seeing like, oh, all of the, people who did high school band that are continuing those instruments, they're all having to learn piano in like, beginner piano classes for 2 years, because that'll help them with, MIDI software, with understanding harmony, with like inner voice movement. Like and meanwhile, I'm like, oh, I don't have to do any of that, because I've already played piano for 10 years prior to that.
Yep. And it's, it's so funny because even when I did go to school, I had played piano so long that I started and I was taking like basic piano, and everything was made so much more sense once I figured out what I was playing. So they would put the sheet music in front of me, and then I'm like, I wouldn't even look. It was crazy. My teacher got me because the name of the song was at the end of the charts instead of on the first page of the chart. And so once I figured out what I was playing, here I go playing it, and I'm like, you know what? If in my mind, this is how I said I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play it as simplistic as possible, because that has to be the way it's written. Now, not even reading the charts, I'm like, oh, so if I'm, and when she showed me the positions of where I needed to be, and your first position, everything is in first position. This day two too, mind you that. Everything is in first position. Everything is these quarter notes here and this, that. So I'm like, oh, okay. Once I figured out what I was playing, I'm playing the whole song. Never even, and how she knew that I didn't know how to actually read the charts was because I'm playing the songs, but I never changed the page. She said, you're on the 4th page of the song already, and we're still, your sheets is still on the 1st page, and you're playing what's on page 4. And I said, dang it. And so it helped me, like, to be able to read it, helped me do something different than me playing just by ear.
Right.
But it was quicker. It was a quicker process to learn how to read than it was to have to learn how to play.
Right. Yeah. And I even, I'm always in the camp of like, if you grew up learning to play by ear, I don't need you to learn like, the deepest theoretical craziness, but like understanding like a little bit of like how you're, what chord qualities you're playing, what things you're voicing, like understanding a little bit of that helps to kind of streamline the process of learning a tune. Because I think of like with Earth Radio, we have like, half the band is music school folks who like have been thrown through the ringer of any kind of, like play with this thing, do this thing with this ensemble, try this, learn this in a week. Like you're playing with Randy Brecker in 2 weeks. Wait, what? like a lot of, like urgency, but also like, having to condense your skill set into like all right, I have 5 days to learn this tune. Like, here's my process of learning it in 5 days. Like there's a way to break it down and understand what's going on. And then the other part of Earth Radio is very creative, very, a lot of the vocabulary they use is, within a range of understanding certain types of chords and qualities and like things that fit what they normally gravitate towards as composers. But not necessarily with all of the understanding of, I mean, more so they can explain it, but like sometimes it feels like, you know, you're learning by rote from someone who like is writing something that's not as straightforward as a normal form. And that's been kind of the interesting support roles of Earth Radio, is to kind of like the way we meet in the middle is being able to translate each other's ideas back and forth, because we all have at least a strong sense of what we like to write with and do with, and can communicate like, oh yeah, it's this kind of chord, like a minor 7, and then it's like, oh, you got the G in there, like that's it's like an 11, you throw that in there. Or it's like, oh, it's kind of like a C over D minor, like there's different ways to think about it. And I'm also like having to write charts, partially because I want to, eventually I want to bundle it and like have it be part of like a publishing type thing. Or even like, get a Sound Slice account and just start like, hey, you listen to Earth Radio, check out this and how it's all put together. But yeah, I'm always for like, if someone who is only learning by music can like open themselves up to learning by ear and having no script, that's beneficial. And if someone's only learned by rote and vocabulary, if they can learn a little bit of theory, that just helps, it saves time on semantics.
And you know what? It's also saving time when you have to see. One of the things is this. So me reading music, them days are real limited, like, and so I don't practice it as much. But right. What I do know is when you have to learn 20 songs in a weekend, it's so much easier for guys to just come with the sheet and put the sheet down, and you just looking at it. You never had to learn a song. You never had to stress learning music is stressful, especially when it's like like imagine somebody say, hey, there's an artist coming in town and you got to play 6 out of the 10 tones straight off the rip. Well, then what ends up happening is, if you got to play 6 out of the 10 tones right off the rip, and then you want to play it, especially if you're playing for an artist, you want to play it precisely to what you need to play for them to know their own music. Then it's easier if you know how to just say, hey, cool, the car's coming in. I don't have to get up out of my bed. I ain't got to sit down and listen to none of this music. I ain't got to do the musician thing, drive in the car and turn it on and start charting it out. Go to the 6 over here, play the major over the 3, or play, So then what happens is you get to walk into a venue, into sound check, and look at the charts, look at the rhythm, and like, oh, let's go. So,
yeah.
And you can say to that point, this is what's on paper. Give or take, scratch out a couple notes.
It's like, this is what was written down. This is what we're doing. Like, you sent me the chart.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's something I feel like I've run into with I've had times where people send me a chart, and then or they send a chart and they send a reference song, and it's like they go like, yeah, it's this song, and here's the tune off Spotify, and you listen to the versions and they don't line up, and then you have to go back and be like, hey, so like, I don't know if you meant to send this recording or you meant to send a different chart. Like, this is kind of what discrepancies I'm finding. And then that's when they either go like, oh yeah, it's actually this recording, or, oh, right, that was an older chart, here's the new one. Or you're kind of having to help. At least I find myself having to help, like, correct the mistakes, make the new chart, and send out the right version to get everyone on the same page. Because it's the what's on the paper. I've known, times where I do like a Blue Water Kings gig, and I have, like a lead sheet chart. Someone else is reading off of someone's like slightly different version from like an ultimate guitar tab. And then someone's reading like an iReal Pro app lead sheet and,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they're all different, and you're just looking at each other like, was that you're supposed to play a B flat there? No, you're supposed to play this chord there. No, I think it
No,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
And that gets weird. That gets weird when we doing gigs and somebody come in and they like, no, this is what I heard, or you were like, no, that's not what's there. And that gets weird. So it's definitely a lot easier when you could just go to the chart and just say, hey, here we go. That's what it is.
Yeah. Did your video cut out?
Yes. Hold on.
Okay.
Find my charger.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if it was like, if my computer was just frozen or something weird.
There we go.
Yeah. And I liked the flexibility as a keyboard player to be able to come into a situation and feel like I have a lot of different tools in my arsenal to, like, if I don't know a song, I can kind of hear it and figure it out in the moment. Or if if someone's not sending me charts, I still know how to make like little helpful lead sheets pretty quick. Yeah, because I've been in those situations where like I don't know what's going on, and then I'm just kind of like improvising, trying to, okay, I think we're in this key. Oh, they changed keys. Okay, what's
No, yeah. Lately though, I think one of the best parts about being in the pandemic is I have not had to learn any music. I have not had to take the time out to learn any music. I have been working on my own music.
Right.
And I did put out some music. Matter of fact, on my birthday last year in June, I put out a song called Bad Day, Good God. And it was a song that I recorded. And I had recorded the song in 2018, but I just never finished it. I'm like, man, I'm sitting on all this music. I need to. And so last year in the beginning of March, I completed a whole album. And I put out a single last year. I hadn't put out the album, and the album is really done, but I hadn't put it out yet. So I'm getting around to putting it out this year. But it was definitely it's been a pleasure not to have to learn anybody's music for the moment. Now I miss
Right.
I'm beginning to miss it for sure, but I haven't had to do anything, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I feel like the only music I've had to learn, other than like, certain things, to learning like newer Earth radio tunes for recording and learning, some stuff that Mark Lavengood wanted to do for like a couple shows that I did with him last year. It's mostly been like in the last 3-4 months, like trying to find my version of like what's social media for me. And a lot of it that I like is like, okay, people's attention spans already are like, super short. So if I'm going to make, a minute-long video where I know someone's going to scroll by it, it'll keep playing and then, repeat. Like, it's not going to play 15 seconds and then go to the IGTV. Is like, I feel like some people click on it, some people don't. So
No, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it's like, oh, I want to like, get better at matching certain tones on keyboards, and like, oh, I'm going to learn this tune where I can play around with, my sub fatty, or like play around with the microKORG and like figure out like, oh, I figured out, the tune I'm already like interested in learning for, oh, the chord change or that cool bass line or whatever. Now it's me improving a little bit at a skill, and then also kind of putting it out there as just, not really thinking about it a lot, because I'm not at the point to do something super produced.
Now let me ask you this: do you play organ any?
So it's funny. Being at Third Coast Recording Company with my office there, they have a B3 and a C3 that can be used for sessions, and I will track organ, but I'm not the kind of person who can like, I would need to play it more to be that type of person to know how to work the drawbars and like understand like, oh, this is kind of the vibe. How do I quickly get to the more like subtle tones or the overdriven sound, or, you know, I know enough to like understand the, you know, like the touch and the feel of it a little bit. But yeah, I see what some people do with organ, and I'm like, that there's a lot of voice movement and like quickly jumping between drawbars, and yeah, that's stuff I still need
I
to
would
play
love
around
one
with.
day to just sit down with. I would love one day to just sit down with you and hear your approach on organ, man. We're gonna have to set that up.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to set that up like fairly soon, man. I would love to sit down and just hear your approach on organ, man. Hey, you still do sound too?
Yeah. So the sound, it's funny. So last year when things were starting to shut down, Founders was like, hey, so we can pay your average, like what you would get paid on average per week until we figure out what's next. And then they furloughed the sound and entertainment team in May. So we were just sitting there, still technically employed, but with, you know, no pay. It was just kind of like waiting. And then October came around and they were like, hey, so we're going to let the whole sound team and entertainment team go because there's no shows, but we'll let you know when things start up again. But a lot of the people who were on those teams have already transitioned into other spaces. So I still do sound in the sense that a lot of my sound work has been getting more comfortable with recording audio. Not so much live sound. Like there hasn't been a lot of shows period, but like there hasn't been a lot of times where I'm just doing sound. It's usually like, oh, Earth Radio is playing and nobody's there to run the PA or set up any equipment, so I have to do that. And then like, oh, this band needs to do a stream, but we don't, like the person who was asked to do the stream doesn't know how to connect the thing. All right, let's figure out how to do that.
Right.
Even with GR Noir, like whoever like installed the sound thing initially had a setup that was good for like, you know, like, oh, we want to put music into the house ceiling PA and have it distribute evenly across the room. And there was a mixer in the back kitchen. It's similar to what Founders has for their like house music setup, where there's like, all right, you can turn up, you know, there's certain channels, so you could like plug in a mic closer to the stage area and then have that be able to be adjusted at the mixer. But they didn't have a way for the musicians to hear each other on stage. There was no stage monitoring or anything. So Tuesday I helped set up that with what minimal equipment was there. There's basically one mix that with, you know, the amount of cabling and the type of mixer that's currently on the stage, where there's one output, it goes into the monitor right by the piano, and then that same feed gets sent to the other two speakers before it gets sent to the house mixer.
Yeah, no, I get it. But that makes sense though. Exactly how you explained it all makes sense.
Yeah. So eventually they'll get to a point where it's like, okay, individual mixes for each monitor and the option to have they want to do live streaming, which is like, okay, like that means you probably need a second Wi-Fi network. You'll probably need like, if you're not going to want to have things on tripods taking up floor space, you're going to need some camera mounts. Like that's a whole other conversation for later.
No,
so
I got you.
a lot of my sound stuff has been like just helping. Even yesterday I was helping my friend with audio and video related to like streaming from your house and just using open broadcast software and understanding like how to get basic stuff plugged in. And
yeah,
so that's been a lot of my sound work the last few months.
No, that's dope. So we definitely got to talk offline about some of that. I just recently here, me and a friend bought a Midas M32.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so, and, you know, obviously right now the running thing is like the Midas and the Behringer. Like that's kind of like the norm right now for a decent budget. And so yeah, we'll talk offline about that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the board that Founders has that I trained on. So I know enough about it, and what I don't know, I can ask my old boss, because he was the rare combination of like, and well, I guess more people might do it, but like usually I see like it's a sound guy and they do sound and they know how to set things up, but they need to send things to get repaired. But Morgan could, you know, mix a show and fix cables, route cables, install things. Like he is an electrical engineer as well. So
it makes all the sense in the world. So we definitely could talk about, I know this got nothing to do with the life of a keyboard player. Yes. So we could definitely talk about that offline.
Yeah. Well, and it's in a way it kind of is. And it's like people just trying to do something when there's not a lot of keyboard gigs.
No, that's true. That's true. But it's some certain help I need. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna work that out. But I still want to sit down and just hear your ideas on organ, just hear how you approach it, man. You know, I play organ. I have an organ, and I play organ, you know, for church often. So, but you know, you're a different genius type creative guy. So I want to hear some of that one of these days.
Yeah, I'm down, especially to just learn more too. I know I was chatting with Rufus the other day, and he's kind of that chameleon of like being able to jump in on a hip hop track on a digital keyboard, play organ in church, do something more classical or acoustic on a grand piano. Like he just, you know, is a keyboard person.
Yeah, no, I'm still trying to link with Rufus. I haven't had the chance. I know he's in Grand Rapids quite frequently, so I'm gonna definitely make it my business one of these days just to link up with him and just kind of, you know, pick his brain too.
Yeah, I think he might be playing. I think it's Friday next week for GR Noir's like opening week.
Nice.
He's, I don't know who's in his trio, but I think he's doing a trio set, which would, I mean, I'm gonna try and be there. I don't know what the situation is with like, you know, 25% capacity and like reservations and. But if
that's gonna be crazy. I'm still gonna. Even if I gotta, you know, if I gotta pull up to the church and just kind of put my head in the door.
Yeah. Hey,
I'm gonna catch him. I'm gonna catch him.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, I think we, you know, had a good chat, good conversation about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's cool hearing more about your background and all the things you're doing, and where you mentioned new music and stuff. Is there like a website or like check it out on Spotify or like where
you can check it out on all digital platforms, Apple Music, all of them, Spotify, Amazon, it's everywhere. The name of the song is called "Good Day." Bad Day Good Guy. I don't know how to set up. Bad Day Good Guy. And just type in Kenny Matthews, Bad Day Good Guy, and you can find it on all social media platforms. I mean, it's all over my social media as well, and all digital outlets. So, yeah, that's where you can find me, and then you can follow me on all social media platforms at Kenny Matthews. You'll find me. I'm somewhere. I'm always normally the first person that pop up. Type in Kenny Matthews, except the race car driver.
Right. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I think this, you know, great conversation. I'm sure we'll talk again offline and on the podcast again at some point this year. And yeah, Thanks
No,
for
I appreciate
nice.
I just appreciate the chat, man. You know, again, like it's crazy because whenever we see each other, it's always this long conversation of catching up because just is what it is, and I appreciate the opportunity and just to think about. I'm just a regular. I'm not even in the stratosphere of you guys. So I'm just happy to have a call, man. I'm just happy to be a part of the show.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. I'm probably gonna like fade it out here and with the final product.